good evening. I almost missed you there. You almost missed me or whatever. Anyway, good evening. Welcome to Tales and Cocktails. And tonight we have a story by James Thurber, which can only be fun. Thurber. James Thurber, born in 1894 in Columbus, Ohio, died in 1961. He joined the New Yorker in 1927 as an editor and writer. His idiosyncratic cartoons began to appear there 4 years later. Two children's classics, The 13 Clocks and The Wonderful O. I used to have the 13 Clocks. I have searched this place upside down trying to find it. I think it got lost somewhere in moves, and I'm so sorry. I've got to see if I can find it. And The Wonderful O, which I don't know, and a memoir of his time at the New Yorker, The Years with Ross. He also co-wrote a successful play, The Male Animal, that was with Elliot Nugent, if I remember correctly, and appeared in A Thurber Carnival, a miscellany of his works that was adapted for the stage. In 1947, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty was made into a film starring Danny Kaye. The Darlings at the Top of the Stairs. Childhood used to end with the discovery that there is no Santa Claus. Nowadays, it too often ends when the child gets his first adult, the way Hemingway got his first rhino, with the difference that the rhino was charging Hemingway, whereas the adult is usually running from the child. This has brought about a change in the folklore and mythology of the American home and of the homes of other offspring-beleaguered countries. The dark at the top of the stairs once shrouded imaginary hair, but now parents, grandparents, and other grown relatives are afraid there may be a little darling lurking in the shadows with blackjack, golf club, or .32 caliber automatics. The worried psychologists, sociologists, anthropologists, and other ologists who jump at the sound of every backfire or slammed door have called our present jeopardy a child-centered culture. Every 7 seconds, a baby is born in the United States, which means that we produce every 2 hours approximately. I would say this amounts to a child-overwhelmed culture, but I am one of those who do not intend to surrender meekly and unconditionally. There must be a bright side to this menacing state of civilization, and if someone will snap on his flashlight, we'll take a look around for it. More has been written about the child than about any other age of man, and it is perhaps fortunate that the literature is now so extensive. A child would have become 21 before its parents could get through half the books on how to bring it up. The trouble with the child expert is that he is often a dedicated or desiccated expository writer and lecturer, and time with are beyond him. Margaret Mead, the American anthropologist, is an exception, for she realizes the dangers inherent in twisting infantile creativity into the patterns of adult propriety, politeness, and conformity. Let us glance at a few brief examples of creative literature in the very young, for which they should have been encouraged, not admonished. The small girl critic who wrote, "This book tells me more about penguins than I wanted to know," has a technique of clarity and directness that might well be studied by the so-called mature critics of England and the United States, whose tendency in dealing with books about penguins or anything else is to write long. Then there was the little American girl who was asked by her teacher to write a short story about her family. She managed it in a single, true, and provocative sentence. Last night my daddy didn't come home at all. I told this to a 5-year-old moppet I know and asked her if she could do as well, and she said yes, and she did. Her short story in its entirety went like this. My daddy doesn't take anything with him, whiskey. I am known to parents as a disruptive force, if not indeed a naughty influence, upon my small colleagues in the field of imaginative writing. When Sally, aged 4, told me, I want to be a ghost, her mother said quickly, no, you don't. And I said, yes, she does. Let her be a ghost. Maybe she will become another W.E. Henley, who wrote, and the world's a ghost that gleams, flickers, vanishes away. Who is W.E. Henley? The child's mother asked me uneasily. Wilhelmina Ernest, who became a ghost. Her mother said she didn't want Sally to become a poet or a ghost, but a good wife and mother. Finally, there was Lisa, aged 5, whose mother asked her to thank my wife for the peas we had sent them the day before from our garden. I thought the peas were awful. I wish you and Mrs. Thurber was dead, and I hate trees, said Lisa, thus conjoining in one creative splurge the nursery rhyme about peas porridge cold, the basic plot sense of James and Cain, and Burnham Wood moving toward Dunsinane. Lisa and I were the only unhorrified persons in the room. We knew that her desire to get rid of her mother and my wife at one fell swoop was a pure device of creative literature. As I explained to the two doomed ladies later, it is important to let your little daughters and sons kill you off figuratively, because this is a natural infantile urge that cannot safely be channeled into amenity, or what Henry James called the twaddle of graciousness. The child that is scolded or punished for its natural human desire to destroy is likely to turn later to the blackjack, the golf club, or the .32 caliber automatic. The tiny twaddler of ungraciousness has my blessing, as you can see. You can also see our burgeoning creativity of the female child. This is because I am much more interested in Thurber's theory of Elaine Vital, the female life force, than in Bergson's theory of Élan Vital, the masculine life force, which it seems to me is all he isolated. Elaine Vital, if properly directed, that is, let alone, may become the hope of the future. God knows we have enough women writers, at least one too many if you ask me. But I believe they are the product of a confined and castrated infantile creativity. Confined and constrained infantile creativity. They have turned to the pen and the typewriter instead of the blackjack, golf club, and .32 caliber automatic. Boys are perhaps beyond the range of anybody's sure understanding, at least when they are between the ages of 18 months and 90 years. They have got us into the human quandary, dilemma, plight, predicament, pickle, mess, pretty pass, and kettle of fish in which we now find ourselves. Little boys are much too much for me at my age, for it is they who have taken over the American home, throwing everything, usually into the ground. Most American parents will not answer the telephone when it rings, but will let a little boy do it. Telephone operators, I have been informed, would frequently say to a mumbling toddler, "Is there anyone older than you in the house?" Many of the tradespeople and artisans I deal with, or try to, in my part of Connecticut, go in for this form of evasionism. A small male child would pick up the receiver and burble into the transmitter. In this way, urgency or even crisis is met with baby talk. Or the fact that my plumbing has let go or a ceiling has fallen down is reduced in this new system of non-communication to a tiny, halting, almost inaudible recital of what happened to a teddy bear, or why cereal is not good with sliced bananas and should be thrown at Daddy. The tradesman or artisan and his wife are spared the knowledge of a larger disaster at the expense of the nerves and mental balance of all. I'll set down here an exasperatingly personal experience in this area of obfuscation. Utis, a tiny voice demanded when I called the plumber one day. This is Tanta Cloth, I said, and Tanta Claus won't give you any Twistmas presents this Twistmas if you do not put Mommy or Daddy on the other end of this goddamn apparatus. Apawana? Asked the tiny voice. At this point, his mother, like a woman in transport, and on her third martini, grabbed up the receiver. He said, Appomattox, didn't he? She cried. Isn't that wonderful? Madam, I said, chilling the word. The answer, Lou, not Appomattox. The next voice you hear will be that of me, dying in the flood of broken pipes and the rubble of falling ceilings. And I slammed up the receiver. Ours is indeed a child-centered culture, in the sense that the little boys have got me squarely centered in their gun sights. I shall continue to urge on the little girls who hate trees, are indifferent to penguins, envy Banquo, wish Mother were with the angels, and can read Daddy like a book. What you are going to do, I don't know, but I advise you to keep glancing over your shoulder and look out for the darlings. And from lanterns and lances, that's The Darlings at the Top of the Stairs by James Thurber, who never disappoints. Oh, my dears, that's it for Tales and Cocktails tonight. Whew, I hope you've had fun. I certainly have. And I look forward to being with Tales and Cocktails at 6 o'clock on Wednesday evening. Good night, my dears.